All right, mic check 1 2 1 2. Let's see what this is. Make sure my volume is up. Actually, let me, sign out of that. All right, let's try this again. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Yeah, I think people are either not getting a notification or something else is going on. But the show must go on. If you can hear me, put one in the chat. All right, let me see this now. Interesting. I never received an update. All right, let me do this one more time. Mic check 1 2 1 2. All right, I think anybody, if they can't hear me, they'll say so. All right, let me get started with this anyways, because I'm already late. All right, welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 290, Black Tech Talk. Hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. Let me see. I'll give people a few seconds to come in and see what's going on. Um, who just popped in here? Wezzy, what's up, man? I know it's a little early and we started a little late, so people probably not on. I did switch the times though because um I didn't want to do the open chat earlier than the earlier than the Black Tech Talk. So I just want to fly through the Black Tech Talk and hope that anybody who had any questions can actually get to it before we get to the prime time stuff. Let me grab my charger, man. All right. All right. Give me a few minutes and I'll get started with this whole entire thing. All right, let me get started, man, because we're already 5 minutes in. So anybody wants to stop me, they can stop me. All right, so tonight's tech talk is about help desk and desktop support. And this came about because a lot of the emails that were coming in based on the mentorship advice that I was giving out before. So a lot of people were trying to figure out how can they get in, where is they where is the ground floor for them, what's the entry level, what's the pay, what's the skill sets needed. So I'm going to go over all of that tonight about the level one aspect of IT and what they need to know going into this, because I see this question very frequently when people email me, and they ask it in the chat all the time. So I think this will be a good reference point for a lot of these guys who are trying to get in. All right, so let me get to this. So the first aspect, um, the terminology, right? So the title, help desk and desktop support. Typically what happens with help desk and desktop support is that the two are usually intermingled with each other because the terms are kind of um, interchangeable. So help desk and desktop support, some organizations, they see it as one, other organizations, they see it as separate. From my experience, I'll say that help desk is usually people who are involved in the ticketing aspect of the incoming inquiries from users, clients, so on and so forth. They're the ones who do the processing behind the background that you don't even see. So you pick up the phone, you call somebody, and the person on the other end should be considered to be help desk. Very rarely does desktop support ever pick up a phone, in my experience. I think much larger organizations typically have it separate. And the reason why they have it separate is because you need somebody to answer the phone. That's just the nature of the environment. You can't have somebody answering the phone and then leave and then go assess a call, but then 8 more calls come in, 2 more calls come in, and there's nobody to answer the phone. So you usually have a dedicated help desk team. Desktop support focuses on the resolution aspect of endpoint systems. So laptops, desktops, iPhones, Android, tablets, phones, VoIP systems, printers, um, wireless access points, everything that a user can touch and access, that's going to be supported by desktop support. Small organizations, help desk, desktop support, the title is always merged into one role. So that's been my experience. Wesley says later on desktop support becomes support engineer. Not typically. Not typically. The term engineer gets thrown around a lot. It doesn't. It almost lost its meaning in the United States because anybody can be an engineer now. But let me finish this up. So what happens here with help desk is that help desk people are usually involved in the service management aspect. So let me explain what service management is. So service management is the business support role of information technology, information systems. There's a whole entire framework that has been adopted by ITIL on a global stage. Everybody uses this sort of methodology for troubleshooting and resolving IT service issues. So if you're going to get into help desk, 9 times out of 10, most organizations that are traded, publicly traded, will be using some form of ITIL, or they'll just use ITIL for the most part. I think ITIL is at level, is at stage 4 right now, or version 4, I should say. So that's been, I think that's 2019. They finally revamped it. So help desk, what is help desk trying to accomplish um, in any sort of business environment, healthcare, finance, you name it, there's some form of help desk there. They're trying to take on um, incidents or tickets that have been submitted to the the service management system. You're trying to troubleshoot things over the phone as well, right? So you need to have the patience to work with customers, customers or clients to understand what the problem is and how to de-escalate the user or the client from blowing up over the phone because they lost their patience, whatever device it is. Usually, usually it's because they are working on something critical and they need to have access to it, and the device isn't working the way that it should be working. You always want to start from, is the device powered up? And if it is powered up, what is it doing? What were you doing as a user prior to this incident happening? So you got to get an understanding of what the situation is and what transpired before that, so that you can actually come up with a better resolution. So, for example, user's device, user walks with the laptop, user went to a meeting or went to lunch, closed their laptop, and now the device, they close the lid on the laptop, and now the device doesn't work, doesn't power back up. So, what's going to happen now is you need to figure out why the device isn't powering on. How would you go about doing this? The way I approach a situation like that is I need to plug in the power adapter to the device to see if there's a power LED that's going to light up on it. Usually there's a LED on the adapter or on the laptop itself that's going to power up. It's either orange or it's green or it's red or something to that effect. If you do have a user who has this issue, you want to make sure you plug that in first, and you want to make sure that you got power. If you don't see a LED light, it means something else is wrong. If the device has a battery in it, you want to separate that battery from the laptop. Reason being is you want to make sure that you're isolating all possible areas. So if the device isn't powering up and it has a battery in it and you have a power adapter, let's plug it in first. If that's not working, let's have the user plug it in first. And then if that's not working, then we want to separate the battery from that device and see if we can power up that way. Two different power sources. You have a portable, you have a battery, and then you have the AC adapter. If the AC adapter isn't powering up either, then could be a problem with the AC adapter, could be a problem with the battery too. Battery is drained, battery is not getting the charge from the AC adapter, you're gonna have to swap out the adapter. If there is multiple outlets, you wanna check and verify that we do make an attempt to plug it into a different outlet, because certain outlets may be faulty. It's not uncommon that an outlet becomes faulty. Faulty wiring, just faulty circuit. And then from there, if the device powers up, now we need to go in and verify that the device is getting a charge. Is the battery charging? Is it not charging? These are some of the areas that you're going to do over the phone from a help desk perspective that you may not have physical access to the device, so you need to be able to walk the user through the whole entire process. I usually spend 0 to 15 minutes in this process to actually um, make sure that we're doing checking all variables to make the user is, we're trying to figure out exactly why the device isn't powering up. So those are some of that's one aspect of the help desk as to what they're going to be doing. Um, especially if you have a similar device in front of you, usually help desk people usually have about 2, 3, 4 laptops because they're supporting multiple devices depending on what kind of environment they're in. Other aspect is usually a printer issue. User can't print to network printer because it was never set up. Network printers in office environments usually have a descriptive name to it. Let's say corporate name, Business of America, Bank of America, BOA dash print 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 2224 could be a location, right? 2224 could be 22nd floor, 24th cube, or 24th section on the floor. You're going to want to ping or see if you can verify that the printer is in the printer is on the network. So there's a variety of ways you can do this. You can usually have some kind of there's usually an IP to the printer, so you can ping the IP. IP shows up. If the IP gives you a return, you know that the IP is available and you know that the printer is available. Once you can verify that the printer is even up, then you just go into Windows. If you're using Windows, for that matter, the user's using Windows, then hey, what's up, guys? Who just joined the chat? Usually, if you can ping the printer, then it's already up. You want to add the printer from Windows. You want to go to the control panel. You want to seek out printers and fax. I think that's what it is on Windows 10. I don't really know because I haven't done support in quite some time. You want to go to printers and fax in the control panel. You want to add printer based on name, based on the network that you're a part of, and then you can go from there. And that usually takes about 90 seconds to add a printer on, and then you can send a test page to the printer to verify that the device can actually see it and that the user is actually able to use it. So those are some of the aspects of help desk that a lot of the time is what you're going through. Duration for a help desk person is usually about a year at best, depending on the environment. Big environments, you're going to spend at least a year and a half in there. Smaller environments could be different because you may end up doing more than just help desk. You may end up doing network support as well. Switch goes down, router goes down, some form of other equipment goes down. You may be taking on that responsibility, so you may have a longer duration in a smaller environment. Bigger environments, you want to get out as soon as possible. You usually want to put that year on your resume to ensure that you have that experience. So the way how I see it is, do what you can within that year framework and then start looking. You always want to get that A+ no matter what. A+, Network Plus, and ITIL certification. Most organizations that are big, publicly traded, they usually have some ITIL training. Really easy, dead simple to get the certification for that. And then from there, you're going to go to desktop support. Desktop support, as I said earlier, guys who are out there working on the physical devices, doing troubleshooting, resolution, and so on and so forth. Once again, A+, Network Plus, ITSM, so IT Service Management is an actual certification. I'll bring that up in a few minutes, but I just want to make sure that we cover all this before we go forward. Desktop support, what are these guys doing? swapping out motherboards, swapping out memory, swapping out hard disks, blowing out systems that have too much dust in them because they've been sitting for so long, they've accumulated all this dust, and now these fan may have, you know, failed because there's so much dust caked up around the motor, and it can't turn anymore, or there's so much heat being built up in there because it accumulated all this dust. One of the systems I worked on some years ago, um, I went to go pick it up, and it's been sitting for so long that there were mice sitting in the back of it, or living in the back of the machine. When I picked it up, there was things bobbling around in there, and I couldn't understand what was in there. And there were mice living in the back of it. So that's the type of stuff you're going to run into um, in these environments when you're doing desktop support and things of that nature. So again, swapping out the hard disk, swapping out all the peripheral components, internal, external. Most devices don't use DVD ROMs anymore or DVD rewriters because you just don't need it. And plus, they're moving to a more ultra portable sort of device. Worst thing to go through, swapping out screens on laptops. Pain. It's a pain because it takes up a lot of time, and you're usually down for about 4 hours swapping on the screen and making sure that it actually works. Same thing with logic boards, motherboards. Those things need to be swapped out. That's half of your day gone already. So memory, swapping out memory could be tricky. Not all memory is compatible with every single device. So what's going to happen here is that you're going to run into compatibility issues. You need to verify that the memory that user is trying to expand is actually compatible. You can look on the memory manufacturer's website to verify this, or you can look on the device manufacturer's website to see if it's compatible or not. Not uncommon that one type of memory is incompatible with the device in particular. Um, I know Apple, Apple are very picky with off-shelf, off-branded memory. You can't just slide any sort of memory up in there because they're very fickle. Whereas you can take a Lenovo and you can probably slide whatever kind of memory you want in there because it has a wide compatibility base to work with. So you always want to verify that the memory is compatible. You also want to check BIOS updates on the manufacturer's website to ensure that there's compatibility between those between the memory and the device itself. What may work on the X series Lenovo may not work on the T series Lenovo unless there's the BIOS update. BIOS updates typically include new compatibility for memory so that they can accept more and have a wider um, uh, um, base of memory compatibility. So always want to make sure that you do that first before you even pop the memory in there, before you even order the memory, before you can even explain to the user that this doesn't work, or if it does work. You can't just tell the user or the client, hey, buy this memory from Best Buy, and then we'll put it in, because if it doesn't work, then the user is kind of SOL, and so are you. So you always want to verify this stuff before you go ahead, reading the documentation, going to the device website, looking at the release notes from the latest updates. Those type of things need to be prepped up first before you can actually order and install memory. Hard disk, SSDs, NVMs, whatever you want to call them, have the same issue. You can't just pop in certain hard drives and think that it's going to work. So you want to verify that on the manufacturer's website as well. Another issue you're going to run into is wireless connectivity. So wireless drivers, wireless adapters can be faulty depending on the brand. Acer, some of these off brands, like Vizio and whatnot, these sort of devices always have some form of compatibility issue with certain networks because the software sucks, the drivers suck, firmware is out of date. You want to do the best that you can with what you have to work with. Me personally, if it's an off brand like a Vizio or something like that, an Asus, you want to go to the manufacturer's website. You want to download the latest driver updates. If there's some available, run those first before you start swapping out adapters or buying external adapters and adding it to it. Because you're wasting a lot of time trying to swap out an adapter or buy an external adapter because you don't even know what the issue is. You got to go through the basic steps first to see if there is a compatibility issue, if there is a recall or some sort. What else can I say about this? Desktop support also, you're going to be working on laser-based printers. So laser printers are different from inkjet. Inkjet typically uses these small little hand-based cartridges that pop into the printer itself. Laser-based printers, especially black and white or even color, have 4 independent colors that go into it. Or if it's black and white, you have diffuser, and then you have the cartridge itself, and then you have a thermal roller that goes with it as well. It's usually part of a service maintenance package. Usually every 25,000 to 30,000 sheets needs to be swapped out. It's not uncommon that a printer will go through that in a month, especially in some environments that are very print heavy. Financial organizations, government organizations continuously go through fusers and maintenance kits, as well as toner. Toner is a constant for a lot of laser printers because they use a powder rather than an ink. If you're going to support this type of stuff, you got to know what it is, what the environment is like, and how much maintenance is going into this. Check for firmware. You want to make sure that the firmware is up to date on most printers. Most organizations will push a firmware update automatically. It's 50-50. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It usually fails. At that point, you're going to need to go in there and hard reset to actually push the update manually. Laser printers, very complicated to work on. You want to make sure you get the right tool set. I personally use who makes this? Pros Kit electronic repair kit toolkit. So what I'll do is I'll drop that link into the chat so that you all can see it. Printers are going to take up half of your day if there is a problem. You need to repair thermal rollers, do a maintenance kit update. That can take at least 3 to 4 hours. If you're by yourself and if you don't have any supply chain issues. I used to support a lot of HP products, so looking through documentation, doing doing the research on firmware releases and what happened with the last release, what's going on with the latest release, and comparing notes and things like that. That will actually help you to understand why this printer is malfunctioning. What happens in a lot of environments is that users always leave out paper because they're lazy. It's just inherent in their business as usual, their business process. They don't have time to really be stacking things away and making sure things work. That's not their job. They don't really care about that. They'll leave the paper out. It gets dry, humidity builds, and then static builds. They put that old paper inside that printer, and it passes through the transfer roller into the fuser, and then it locks up, and now you have a jammed up printer, and it's going to continue to jam because the paper that's being used is actually what we call stale. Stale meaning that it's not fresh because they left it out. It's not packaged correctly, and the printer is rejecting it because it's not able to pass through it because it's stale. So you want to make sure that if you're having this issue, that you want to shut the printer down, pull all the paper out from the cassette all the way up to the fuser, take that stuff out, turn the roller, pull that paper out of the roller of the fuser, take out the transfer roller, make sure you don't touch it with your fingers, because if you touch it with your fingers, the oils on your fingers will actually destroy it. And then you have to buy a new one, and that's very expensive for any organization. Pull all that stuff out, take a white paper towel, and just clean it out, because you're going to see a lot of black dust in there, and that's the toner. And you also want to roll it and make sure that there's no paper sticking to it. If there is paper sticking to it, there's a high probability that that fuser is faulty and needs to be replaced. Fusers are very expensive. Maintenance kits are even more expensive. It's a part of the life cycle of the printer itself, so you got to look at all of the options and just clear it all out. Make sure you restack the cassette, use some fresh paper, load it up, try it again. If it fails again, you got to replace it. It's just what it is. Black Shingle asks, are legacy devices still a concern, or did Windows 10 force people to drop old hardware? It depends. Usually legacy hardware will push out one final driver update for Windows 10, and that will be it. If it doesn't work, it just doesn't work. And if it works, it works. They're not going to support it after that. If that answers your question. So just supporting printers and scanners. Scanners are another aspect to what we call an MFP, a multifunctional printer. It's not uncommon that when MFPs get moved around, whoever is doing the moving did not lock the scanner. And what happens here is the scanner itself inside the machine will slide from left to right and break, because it's not in a controlled fashion. And if it slides left to right while being moved around, it's already broken. Very expensive to fix that and very time consuming to fix that. So you want to make sure that if there is going to be a internal move or an external move or something to that effect, you want to lock that scanner to make sure that it doesn't move around, for your sake and for the organization's sake, because you're going to be the one fixing it if it does go bad. What else? More desktop support issues. So typically most desktops and laptops have a docking station and are connected over the wire. Laptops will always be connected over wireless as an alternative, but primarily if they're connected to a docking station, they're going to be connected to a Ethernet cord. So user is having connectivity issues at their desktop. Ethernet cables are 50-50 all the time. 9 times out of 10, if the user reports that there's connectivity issues in terms of the internet, you want to verify that Ethernet cable is functional. I personally have a network tester kit. I usually test the network cable right at the desk when I used to go out. Put it in there, see if it does a loop back. If it doesn't do a loop back, just replace the cable. Bring an extra cable with you. Test that cable from the Ethernet port to the jack. If it works, you're in business. Should take you no more than 30 minutes to actually do a troubleshoot call for something like this in person. A lot of times what I found in the past is that Lenovo docking stations are so faulty that they produce a myriad of issues. User shoves the laptop into the docking station, and now the docking station is malfunctioning because it has these connectors on the bottom that are not functional anymore, because how the user docks and undocks the laptop continuously throughout the day. They're cheaply constructed. That's just the way they are, and they can be faulty. I would look at that if all else fails. If all else fails with the Ethernet cable, if all else fails with the laptop testing, look at the docking station. 9 times out of 10, docking station went faulty. If you have a spare docking station, always bring it with you. You can test the user's device on that docking station, and that would give you a verification on whether or not it's the user's device or is it the docking station itself. What are some of the other things that we go through? Dual monitor support, triple monitor support. Always go out and get the latest drivers, video drivers, for any system, because there are bugs in some of these video drivers, whether it's NVIDIA or AMD or Intel. There's always a driver update that is necessary for making things work in terms of multi-monitor setups. So this is a typical issue. User docks their laptop to the docking station, and now the second monitor won't power up. Make sure that the cables are connected. These are usually either HDMI or DisplayPort cables. Very rarely do you see analog cables anymore, because the industry has moved on from analog connectivity. Want to make sure that you unplug and plug that into the docking station or the workstation itself. Make sure that the cables are not too tight in terms of where they're stretched from. Cables are usually about 3 feet. You stretch them beyond, 3 feet. If the dock station is on the opposite side of the system from where the monitors need to be, you got to make sure you kind of bring them a little bit closer so that there's some slack. If they're too tight, then what happens here is the signal gets lost, and then the second monitor or the other monitor doesn't pop up in time, and now the user freaks out. That, if you can prove and verify that the cables work, then you want to look at the docking station and make sure that the docking station is not having issues either. So looking at the bottom of the laptop where the connectors go to the docking station, making sure that there's no paper or any dust, anything like that on there. Pop that, reseat it again, reseat the cables, try it again. If that doesn't resolve it, want to go to manufacturer's website, Lenovo, Dell, HP, download the latest drivers for that machine. You don't want to download the wrong drivers for the wrong machine, because then you're SOL again. NVIDIA drivers, in my experience, are notorious for needing updates on multi-monitor setups. So with a Lenovo, there's a system update utility. You can download that. It will go out and go get the updates for that specific system. And then that takes time, usually about 2 gigs or 3 gigs of updates will come down, and you need to apply the patches or apply the drivers in the software that's according to that system. Software update utilities for each manufacturer are going to be pretty much 99% accurate for that device, based on the serial number, based on the BIOS version, and based on the SKU or the asset tag. And then you can go from there to test out the multi-monitor setup. Most users have 2 monitors, and then they try to use their laptop screen. That's fine. That's a typical setup. So you can actually set it up that way if you go into the control panel and do the monitor setup or graphics card setup, and then you can determine which screen is going to be primary, secondary, and third. So this is some of the issues that you run into as a desktop support person, with your everyday roles and responsibilities are going to be. So let me get into whether or not you should get a certification and what skills are really needed to go into this. A lot of guys who are emailing us from the IT mentorship were curious about what skills do they need, what does it take to actually get in there. Well, you have to have a knack for thinking on your feet. Like I was saying before, you got to understand what is going on in the situation and what transpired before that. If you don't have sufficient information to actually troubleshoot, then you can't actually troubleshoot anything. You don't even know what's going on. So try to find as much information as possible to gather to build a case. If you can gather all the information up, you can add. You're gonna have to add all the stuff into the ticket. So your tickets, your incidents have to be descriptive as possible, because when IT leadership goes back and looks at that incident, they need to know as much detail as to what was going on with the situation, so that they have a better understanding as to what you did to actually resolve it, or why this isn't resolved, and what are the next steps that need to be taken going forward. Um, so the gathering of information is the most important aspect. The second would be your ability to troubleshoot. Can you, in a situation, on your own volition, actually resolve those try to resolve an issue without actually looking for any additional help? You need to exhaust all of your options. I said earlier, checking the dock station, checking the cables, um, verifying the device works somewhere else, or verifying that the cable is actually functional. If it's not, then swap it out with another cable. The ability to think on your feet actually is going to be beneficial going forward. Also, need to be able to turn a screwdriver. You can turn a screwdriver. That's going to help you in swapping out motherboards, swapping out memory, swapping out hard drives and hard disk, and working on printers, and working on um, phones and switches and routers and things of that nature. Things that's going to fall in your lap of responsibility for support. Hey, what's going on, Shaw Willie? So the way how I see it is that there is a process that needs to take place if you're going to do this sort of, if you're going to take on this sort of job, whether it's help desk or whether it is desktop support. Desktop support can be a myriad of issues: iPads, iPhones, um, VoIP systems, so Cisco wireless devices, Polycoms, um, telepresence, and all these other video conferencing platforms, software, hardware. Not uncommon that you may get a Oracle DB connection issue that you have to resolve. There's a variety of ways to resolve it, but got to do your research on which version of Oracle that they're using and what happened before when it was working just fine. You can't just roll back the system to when it did work, because you need to isolate and work on the issue as it's ongoing, so you can not have the user lose any information any further downtime. Did you update the driver? Did you uninstall the driver? Did you um, get the correct driver for it? There's a whole lot of areas how you go about troubleshooting, and um, that's a part of the help desk and desktop support aspect of the role. Let me see. Let me see. Let me go over some of the domains for the A plus. Okay, here we go right here. So there's a new version of the A plus that's already out. 220 1001 and 220 1002. Core 1 and Core 2. So let me see if I can find the table of contents so we can go over this. Mm. Let me see. Just give me a second. Let me pull up the domains of the A plus. Yeah, I think this is it right here. Okay, yeah, I think here we go right here. Share my screen real quick. All right, so this is from the CompTIA 22901 and 22902 A plus Pearson IT certification book. I recommend Pearson because they have the best quality material for studying the exam, in my opinion, bar none. I've used it for all my exams for most part, and never had any issues with failing anything like that. All right, let me increase my screen for a second. So this is the table of contents. Um, it has 12 chapters in it, and we can see from chapter one is technician essentials and computer device autonomy anatomy 101. So technical essentials is what I was speaking about earlier. How do you assess a device? How do you assess um, an issue, an incident, and how do you resolve it, so on and so forth. Chapter 1 is going to go over all of that for you. Chapter 2 is configure and use BIOS tools. So a system doesn't work without the basic input output operating system. So that's what a BIOS is. That's what BIOS stands for. You have to configure the BIOS correctly so that the system can work in Windows or Linux or whatever operating system you're trying to run on there. In this regard, we're talking about Windows. If you don't have the BIOS set up correctly, just from the time aspect, you got to make sure that the time is correct on in the BIOS so that it matches what's happening right now in real time, because it's not connected to the internet. It's not aware of what time it is. So you have to set the time correctly. If the time is not set correctly, then what happens when the user tries to boot their machine and try to log into the machine and connect to the network, the time is going to be different from the network itself. So you got to set the time correctly. So that's what you configure it for. Then you want to configure it for um, performance or stability, um, whether or not you want the first hard drive or the second hard drive to boot, so on and so forth. There's a variety of ways to actually configure the BIOS, but there's usually one solid way that most organizations have it set up. And then chapter 3 goes into motherboard and motherboard components. Motherboard components, like I spoke about earlier, so the components of the motherboard, the socket, the memory slots, the hard disk controller, CMOS, um, battery, and sometimes you have jumpers, sometimes you don't. And then the peripherals on the back and the slots, right? So your PCIe slots and um, SATA slots. Hey, what's going on, Dante? Um, Chapter 4 goes over RAM types and features. So I talked about RAM types before, the memory type. So RAM stands for random access memory. So you want to make sure that the memory types that you have are compatible with the motherboard that you have in your possession. And then chapter 5 goes over PC expansion cards. I spoke about that just a few seconds ago. PCIe. So PCIe is the standard for the PCI components that go inside the machine. You want to make sure that those components that are going in there are actually compatible with your machine. You don't want to get a half-heighted card or a full-heighted card for a half-heighted machine, so on and so forth. Storage devices, I spoke about that earlier as well. So storage devices, which is your SATA drives, your SCSI drives, um, your mechanical hard drives, and solid state disk, external and internal. And then CPUs, AMD, Intel, those are the two main CPUs that go into the motherboards that you choose. And you have to make sure that the CPU is compatible, pin compatible. So pin compatible means that the pins that the socket on the motherboard has available, the pins on your CPU also have to be compatible with it. And number two, it also has to be compatible with the version of the motherboard. So you can't have a motherboard that has revision A in your CPU is out of step, what we call steps. We refer to CPUs as steppings. So you have different steppings for different CPUs, and that's also a compatibility issue with certain motherboards. So you want to make sure that you look at the release notes from the manufacturer's website so that they have that sort of compatibility. I'll go to one right now just to show you. Show you an example. Do is go to motherboards, and we'll go to yeah. Let's go to that. So we have two different motherboards here. We have Intel. You have an Intel based motherboard, and you have a AMD based gaming motherboard. Let's click on the AMD for a second. And we'll go to the support button right here. This is important. Know your manufacturer's website and where they keep all of their documentation. So there's something right here to the left, right here, that says CPU memory support. Always want to verify this before you start opening up people's computers and stuff like that. Want to make sure that everything is verified. So what we're looking at right here is a CPU list, validated since PCB, printed circuit board. All means any and all boards that have been produced are compatible. So I said earlier that there's always revisions to a motherboard, revision A, revision B, revision C, so on and so forth. This says all, that means all of them that they've produced. And then it says validated since BIOS version 2008, BIOS version 0207, and so on and so forth. You see different versions of of BIOS updates here. Version 2301, 2301. See, there's different versions per CPU that are specified here. So a Ryzen 5 Pro 1600 AMD processor is compatible with version 0207 of BIOS update. Ryzen 5 3600X is compatible with 2301. So you got to make sure you are specific about which version of BIOS that you're going into before you start installing these CPUs. One of the issues I had a long time ago, actually a couple years ago, I bought a CPU motherboard bundle from Micro Center, and when I got home to plug it in, it actually didn't work, even though they sold it that way. The reason why it didn't work because the motherboard did not have the right BIOS version available as they sold it. So the motherboard had been sitting on the shelf, and they just paired it with this new AMD CPU, but the motherboard didn't understand the CPU because they never updated it to begin with. The CPU came out after the motherboard, so the motherboard had no way of understanding the CPU's version. So had to go back to the store and have them update the motherboard so that the CPU can be compatible with it. So again, we see all of these variations of CPUs that AMD has with different versions of the BIOS being validated. 2008, 0207, 2301. Got to make sure your CPU is compatible with your motherboard before you start popping things in there, or else you're going to run into some issues. Same thing with memory device support. So here we have a qualified verification list, which is what QVL stands for. And there's different versions. So the last update was August 28th, 2018. And then prior to that was July 13th, 2018. You got to make sure you're checking the dates on this stuff. Don't just automatically assume that you bought some memory and then you just plugged it in there and now it's going to work, because what's going to happen here is the user or the client is going to be looking at you saying, what are you doing with my system? How come it's not working? Why is it making all these beeping noises? So that's just an example of what you're going to run into when you're dealing with third-party motherboards and so on and so forth. You got to make sure that you have the right compatibility of CPU and memory before you start punching things in there and destroying motherboards, because you can eat a motherboard or you can destroy the motherboard if you're not paying attention to what you're plugging in there. And this is just the driver and tools webpage. You want to make sure that you're selecting the right OS. So we see here Windows 10 64, Windows 10 32-bit. So we'll click on 64-bit, and we'll see again the latest update is August 12th, 2019. This update, this BIOS update, stipulates AM4 socket combo patch, improved compatibility for Ryzen 3000 CPUs, version 2605. So we didn't even see that listed in the CPU compatibility chart. So we can't just assume. Same thing with audio drivers, same thing with LAN drivers here. The last update was April 30th, 2019. Last update for audio driver was April 28th, 2019. So these updates are fairly recent. Chipset driver updated August 2nd, 2019. Qualified vendor list. This is in beta. Keep that in mind what beta means. Beta means it's not a production ready release. So August 8th, 28th, 2018, that was the last time that QVL was updated. It's still in beta for whatever reason. And then you have your utilities, new DRAM type. So utilities actually covers that. July 22nd, 2019. Making sure that you're paying attention to the dates. You may already have that installed and don't even know it, and then you try to go in and install it, and you're kind of doing the same work twice. So let me go back to the A+ chapters in the book. So we talked about CPUs. That's what I was just referring to on that example website of ASUS. And then ports and interfaces. So your printer ports on the back. Most systems don't have old legacy printer adapters back there. You're using USB for the most part. So you have USB, you have legacy mouse connectors on some fancy motherboards. And then you have audio connectors on the back for the ports and the interfaces. So you want to make sure that you're studying up that as well. Everything is industry standard. There are no gotchas. Chapter 9, designing and building custom PC configurations. We just talk about that on ASUS's website. ASUS makes aftermarket motherboards or third-party motherboards for custom PC configurations. That's what goes on. So the A+ certification goes over that. Using, this is chapter 10, using, maintaining, and installing printers and multifunction devices. MFPs, that's what I spoke about earlier in the Hangout. That's the sort of stuff that you're going to run into. You got to know how to troubleshoot and install these sort of devices. And then chapter 11 is networking, Ethernet cables, fiber optic cables, so on and so forth. Those are things you're going to have to study. USB cables. And then chapter 12 focuses on mobile devices. So mobile devices, Blackberries, iPhones, Android devices, tablets, iPads, Android tablets, Chrome books, now Windows Surface tablets. For the most part, that's what you're going to be dealing with, at least from an enterprise standpoint. So this is actually a pretty good book. And if you can find it at your local library, I would advise you to actually go ahead and do so. And here are some of the things that they go into detail on. So motherboards, processors, RAM, and BIOS, we discussed that. Power supplies and system cooling. Power supplies are very important. A bad power supply can bring down a whole entire system. So you got to make sure that you're verifying that the power supply is actually compatible with the system or it's not faulty. System cooling, fans. Always have an intake fan, always have an exhaust fan. At the front, at the back. I/O input ports and devices, we discussed that already. Video displays and video cards, we discussed that already. Customized PCs, we discussed that. Laptops, mobile and wearable devices. So wearable means Apple Watches, Fitbits, things of that nature. Printers, we discussed printers already. Storage devices, including SSDs. We talked about SSDs before, being the new sort of storage device versus the old mechanical-based hard drives. Installing and using, troubleshooting Windows, Linux, and OS X. Those are the three variations of operating systems that you're going to support when you go into this sort of desktop support. So know your way around the operating system. Virtualization, for the most part, most organizations have gone with VMs in one way, shape, or form. Citrix and VMware, two primary candidates of virtualization technology that you're going to find in the workplace. Networking, we discussed networking already. Security, so endpoint security, running antivirus programs, anti-malware programs, user credentials, making sure that those have complex characters, always starts with a capital letter, always followed up with a numerical number, and always ends in a character such as an exclamation point or a question mark for hardening. And it's always 8 characters bare minimum. 12 characters is more preferable. Operational procedures and communications methods. Operational procedures that I discussed before about ITIL, those are the operational procedures and communication methods. So knowing ITIL is actually going to be fundamentally beneficial for you when you're working in an environment. So that's what goes on the 8+. Now let me go over ITIL. Actually, that's not it. Let me get over here. All right, let me share my screen again. And if you guys want to jump on the panel, feel free. I'll drop the link in the chat, and make sure you raise your hand if you want to if you have some questions you want to answer. You want me to answer. All right, this is ITIL certification. So the ITIL certification. The ITIL certification scheme provides a modular approach to ITIL framework and is comprised of a series of qualifications focused on different aspects of ITIL best practice to various degrees of depth and detail. The tiered structure of the qualification offers candidates flexibility relating to the different disciplines and areas of ITIL and the ability to focus their studies on key areas of interest. ITIL is currently evolving from ITIL version 3 to version 4 with a clear transition journey from one scheme structure to the other. The ITIL version 3 can foundation candidates are encouraged to move straight to ITIL for foundations to keep their skills up to date. Intermediate candidates should continue their ITIL version 3 journey to build the skills they need. So here are the structures. Here is a foundation, practitioner, intermediate, expert, and master. You only need foundation to do your job unless you want to be the head of IT service management or IT help desk, for that matter, IT help desk manager. So let's blow this up real quick, this career path. So here we are right here in terms of where do you stand from a help desk perspective? Where can you go with help desk? I talked about this earlier. You usually spend about a year in help desk before you kind of move on to something else. But this chart is actually, or this career path is actually telling you where you can go. Service desk technician. So this is a desktop support help desk person. So it shows that you start off in service desk or IT help, and then you move on to something as a service desk manager, IT help desk manager. In service desk technician, IT support technician, application support specialist, hardware support specialist, network support specialist, security analyst, and incident manager. These are various areas. So let me click on IT support technician because I think that's the most relevant here. Oh, it won't let me see. Which I think is kind of dumb. So a service desk technician, as we talked about earlier, help desk person is usually around level 1, as you can see right here from the chart. Level 1, level 2, level 3 is where you kind of stop at. So level 3 will be like a senior desktop support person. Level 1 is usually help desk. So this is where service desk technician starts off at, or help desk person starts off at level 1, and then they transition to level 2. And then you make that transition to IT support technician. So that's desktop support technician. Usually IT support means gamut of issues. I know guys in IT support who just support AV systems. That's all they do all day long. Audio visual systems, big projectors for big conferences, audio video systems, or like Zoom and other WebEx, things of that nature. That's all they do. They support that because they have to. Big environments require dedicated people, and that's where IT support technicians come in. And then you have application support that can be SAP, Salesforce, Oracle. Application support, that's where that falls in at. Hardware support, fixing things under warranty. I used to do that early in my career. So the guys who go out and swap out the motherboards and under warranty, those are the guys that fulfill that hardware support role. Same thing with network support. And then those are all level 2 roles. So you're kind of level 1 transitioning into one of these 3 or 4 roles here. And then your level 3 to level 4 is service desk manager. Service desk manager, help desk manager, desktop support manager. That's the leadership for that sort of environment. And then you can scroll down here and see IT operations manager. So IT ops would be the overarching aspect of desktop support, network support, service desk, all of that falls under IT operations manager. So this actually is very good, because it's pinpointing where you're going to be at in your career. Level 1 is usually a year, 6 months to a year. Level 2 is usually another 9 months after that. And then level 3 is usually another 9 months after that. So 3 years, give or take, you'll go from level 1 to level 3, and then probably about 5 years, you're talking IT ops manager. So that's not an uncommon transition. And you can do all of this with certifications like the ITIO, like the A+, like the Network Plus. I'll drop the link in the chat so you guys can look at it. Hey, what's going on, Anti-Gravity? CLX says, I'm taking the Network Plus next month. Good for you. Good luck. Yeah, so let me drop that in the chat for you guys. I know people like seeing this type of stuff. Helps them visualize where they're going to be. Let me share this other link, which is the Pearson Publishing book. It doesn't come out until next month, so make sure you pre-order it. So you get your A+, you get your ITIL, and you kind of level up from there. You do your time, you do your studying, and you'll eventually follow that chart that Exilios had posted on their site that I dropped in the chat for you guys. So CET, I want to move on from desktop support and help desk. If you have any questions about it, just let me know and I'll go back over it. CET, so Certified Electronics Technician. This is actually a old sort of job role. Electronics technicians are needed in heavy industry. You can let me bring up a school. Um, hmm. Okay, let me click on this. I think this is actually applicable, and I'll show you guys. Share my screen. So this is from the ETA.org. So basic electronic certifications. Most schools are going to have this. I think it's actually pretty dope that they do have the associate certified electronics technician. because this is going to set you apart in that field. Working on radar systems, working on um, different appliances and things of that nature is going to be crucial. I only know some people who have taken this, but they're usually in the military or they're working on military contractor systems. So I'll go back to this in a second, but basically you need a 75% to pass it. You have 2 hours to take it, 100 exams on the 100 questions on the exam, and certification term is around 4 years, or around a presidential cycle. Let me make sure I drop that in the chat for you guys too, because we're going to go back over that. Um, okay. All right. Let me share my screen real quick. All right. This is an example of a electronics technician program. This one's from Porter and Chester Institute. So electronic systems technician, get the skills to become electronics systems technician, low voltage systems installation, service, and maintenance career training in as little as 1 year. So I recommend some of you all who don't like college or the idea of going to college to actually go to a vocational school like this. It's better to go to a school like this and get the hands-on training than to spend buku bucks at a big college and university that you may not be you may not get the same experience from. So let me go over this. So it says concrete skills. You'll be trained to install, maintain, and repair low voltage systems and associated wiring. We'll teach you all about electronic circuitry, fire alarm, and national electrical codes and electronics diagnostics. You'll learn about voice, data, and fiber optic networks, fire, CCTV, and intrusion alarm technology, telecommunications technology, home entertainment systems, live sound reinforcement, and more. So I think that's actually pretty good. Hands-on training. You can't learn all of this stuff from a book. That's why we supplement classroom with hands-on work where you get to use the same equipment and tools you'll find out in the field. You'll be able to build and design low voltage systems out in the real world because we'll teach you how. Qualified instructors, the job outlook today, everything seems to be connected by cables. Even Wi-Fi needs a connection somewhere. That's why your newly acquired skills could be so valuable. Industries using the technology include aerospace, business, defense, education, energy, finance, manufacturing, and more. Soft skills, in addition to the technical know-how you'll need to perform your job, will teach you the skills you need to be able to be a good and safe employee in the real world. So you see the things that they're going over, and the concrete skills and the hands-on training. These are things that are critical. You can go to a community college, or you can go to a Duke University. You're not going to get this type of stuff at a university level. It's just not going to happen. Most of that stuff is um, teaching you from a book, which is what they were saying before. You can't learn all this stuff from a book. It's impossible. You could be book smart, but if you don't have the hands-on core skills, you'll be useless. You'll be extremely useless. So you want to look up one of these electronics vocational programs in your area. I took these. I went to a vocational school when I was younger, much younger, and it was beneficial for me to move forward, to go to college. I wanted to do more than what the system had, what the program had offered, because I was an IT person by trade. So the electronics aspect was actually beneficial to me, and I knew how to solder, but I didn't know how to build circuit boards out. I didn't understand all that aspect of it, and I did go into a vocational school. Also, the ability to understand Ohm's law, AC and DC, low voltage wiring, and things of that nature. Those are really crucial, and what's going to set you apart in the field, because you have a broader skill set than most desktop support people. Most guys in desktop support or in IT, they only know IT and that's it. They don't understand voltage, low voltage and high voltage, and soldering. They don't understand any aspect of that. That's way beyond their skill set. They're afraid to open up some of these big devices, ATMs, and um, other medical devices and things like that. They're afraid to open up those type of things, primarily because it's not their field of expertise. They don't have a breadth of knowledge in that area. So they pay the price by avoiding getting their hands dirty in these areas. And for guys like us, we're not afraid to open up something. We're not afraid to get our hands dirty and actually look at things that we've never even um, it may not even fall in our scope of responsibility. So that's why these things are important. And I think 1 year is actually relatively good. If it was me doing this all over again, this is exactly what I would do. All right, so I'm gonna drop the link in the chat. Maybe you guys can use that as an example of what you're getting yourself into. If you maybe have a school in your area, you might want to inquire about it. Having that skill set is actually going to boost you into a senior technician's role. And usually defense contractors will be looking for you. And defense contractors pay big bucks for technicians who can do more than one thing at a time, that can multitask in a variety of areas and not afraid to get their hands dirty. Whether it's working on radar systems and working on desktop support and so on and so forth, you might be the go-to person for a lot of things. Let's see. Let me throw my toolkit in there as well. I don't see the well, give me a few seconds. Let me see if I can find the kit that I do have. Not sure if they even still make it. All right, here we go right here. I use this. Let me share my screen real quick. I use this mostly for Apple products. Obviously, it's an Apple products repair kit, but it also works on regular PCs as well. I like it because of the flexibility. I can work on an Apple Mac or an iMac, and I can work on a regular PC because the bits are all the same. They have compatible bits for Apple-based systems, and then there's compatible um, Phillips heads for regular PCs. Most PCs are pretty basic in terms of how you go about unscrewing things. For the more advanced ones, they may require a certain type of bit head, but for all intents and purposes, a Phillips head screwdriver and a flathead is pretty much all you need. But for Apple-based systems, you're going to need an Apple-based kit, and so I use this um, as my go-to. So I'll drop that in the chat for you guys as well. Back when I used to work on computers like that, I don't work on them anymore. I haven't worked on them in years. So I dropped that in the chat for you guys. You can use it if you want to. Up to you. If you're going to work in a corporate environment, I always recommend getting yourself a box of anti-static gloves. If for nothing else, you want to make sure that you reduce the amount of fault on your side so that you're not creating static shocks on motherboards. That's not uncommon that your clothing built up a lot of static, and then you went and you touched somebody's the internals of a desktop computer and you killed it because you had a whole lot of static in your body and you basically destroyed the machine because you weren't grounded. You should be grounded. Typical way of grounding yourself, I always tap something metal first before even touching it, or I hold on to something metal. I know some places require you to wear an anti-static strap. I don't see too many places doing that anymore, but I can understand why they would do something like that and require you to wear it. But anti-static gloves are actually pretty good. One, it reduces the amount of static, and two, it protects your hands from touching germs on other people's systems. I've touched computers that were in research facilities. You don't know what they're doing at that research facility, testing goats and um, testing horses and AIDS vaccinations and things of that nature. You don't know what that computer was doing in that facility, and you don't know who was touching that laptop. A person who has the flu or some other sickness um, drop their laptop off on your desk, and you don't even understand where that laptop has been in that person's house. Some people let their cats sit on their laptops. Their dogs lick the screen. It's a whole myriad of issues of germs that would infect that can infect you. I've seen guys break out on their hands because they touched somebody's computer that was pretty dirty. So you want to make sure you put some gloves on, and depending on the environment. I just do it as a rule because I don't want to be contracting anything. Yeah, nasty people in general. Nasty people in general. there's a lot of disgusting things that goes on in some environments. I've seen all types of bodily fluids on people's computers and stuff like that. So um, you want to make sure that you're not using Windex on people's screens. You don't want to use chemical-based um, solvents on a laptop or a desktop, anything like that. You want to use uh, anti-static wipes and cleaning wipes. You can order those from any computer store like Staples or Office Max or Micro Center or Fry's. They have them. I just buy my own stuff and I expense it back out to the company. Yeah, smokers PCs, cigars and stuff like that. Disgusting. And get yourself some compressed air. Typically with compressed air on laptops, you want to blow out the fan. You want to tip it sideways so that the air that you blow in actually falls back out. You don't want to just blow the air around, and you want to make sure you blow it out outside of the office and not within the office, because you're just blowing the germs back around in one circle and everybody's going to get sick off of it. Because that's what dust holds. It holds a lot of germs and bacteria, and that's what you want to reduce. So you want to reduce the spread of all of that bacteria. So I typically step outside with a laptop and just blow it out, blow all the crumbs out of the keyboard, blow all the dust out of the CPU fan slot. And 9 times out of 10, if a CPU is not fan is not spinning, it's because of that. You don't want to tilt down the compressed air because it's going to blow water. So you want to blow it at a horizontal angle. Um, what else was I going to say? Yeah, buying your own stuff, bring your own tools and equipment. Don't wait on a company to supply you with tools. Bring your own stuff. That way you can take it when you leave the organization. You can take your stuff with you. And plus, people borrow your stuff and they never bring it back. So that always happens. What else? Um, I mean, there's not really much more. I think if you've been through I think if you studied the book, ITIL and um, A plus, you should be very well off. If you plan on going into the electronics program, I think that's going to be even better. You're setting yourself apart. You're setting yourself up for better opportunities, defense contracts that pay lots of money. I know guys who are doing desktop support making $100,000, maybe in Bahrain, maybe in Jordan or something like that. Not uncommon. Bring your own tools, and get your certs, man. Get your certs. Study for your certs. Study for your ITIO. Study for your A plus. Study for if you're going to take the electronics program, get your accredited electronics technician, certified electronics technician cert. That's really big. Yeah, desktop support guys making 100K. It's not uncommon. Go to Saudi Arabia. Go to UAE. Go to Bahrain. Those places. Those places pay big bucks. Maybe in the United States, you're not going to make 100K unless you're like an IT service desk manager. But that's a part of that career path that I dropped in the chat from Exilios that discusses the ITIO path. You move from the level 1, you move to level 2 and level 3. Not uncommon that a person spends 3 or 4 years in desktop support, and that's where they end up at. IT service desk manager or IT um, senior desktops person, senior service desk manager or technician. They even have desktop support engineers, so guys who work in PowerShell. They write PowerShell scripts to make desktops, do certain things, whether it's retrieve logs and information from a system, push updates to a system, so on and so forth. You can do things like that. You can write your own ticket. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat. If you guys got any questions, now would be a good time to ask. If you want to get on the panel, feel free to get on. Yeah, Julian. I think traveling is actually pretty good. Yeah, travel for the money. Get the experience. Get the credentials under your belt. I think that's gonna be worth it. All right. Well, would it be better? CLX asks, would it be better to learn Bash or Python as first scripting language after CMD? Bash. Python is not used across everything else, but Bash is going to be used in Unix or Linux. So you learn Bash as a gateway to Python because Python is similar. It's a transitional path from Bash to Python. I would say Bash to PowerShell, but it depends on what your environment is. I don't work on PowerShell at all for the most part. And I don't work on Bash too much either because that's not my my area of responsibility. But if I did have to use something now at work, then what I would use is PowerShell because that's the only way I can retrieve certain records from most of the devices. But the typical path should be Bash or intro to CS, CS 101, and then Bash, and then Python. You learn PowerShell if you actually have to, not because you need to. Not because, not out of necessity. What I'm trying to say is that not every environment you're going to be in is going to be Windows based in that regard. I'll end this at 8:30 if there's nothing else. I'm surprised nobody else is saying anything because the emails tell me otherwise, that people were very interested in this. So and it's very rare that you're going to use see, you need to learn Bash in order to use Linux. You don't typically need to learn Python in order to use Linux, but Python is an afterthought to Bash. You need to learn Bash if you're going to use Linux, but you don't need to learn Bash if you're going. You don't need to learn Python if you're going to use Linux. You use Python for scripting of um, certain tedious tasks, but even that's starting to go away now too because of APIs. You can connect different systems via API, and you could probably build out your own API, and that's probably the only thing that you're going to need Python for, is to build the API. Okay, Julian. All right, 9 more minutes, and then I'll close it out. Also, as an addendum, learn to make your own RJ45 cables, your Ethernet cables. This is important because if you ever find yourself in a situation where you have a spool of Cat5 cable and some connectors, but you don't have anything else to work with, this is a very good survival technique for IT. Learn to build your own cables. You'll probably never need to use it in a corporate environment, but if someone dropped you off in the middle of nowhere, you're going to need to learn how to do this on your own. The better you get at it, the further you're going to go with it. Let me see if they have the. Let me share my screen real quick before we close out, because I don't want to leave too many stones unturned. All right, this is a network tone probe kit, and this will let you easy to locate and verify the cable status and troubleshoot wiring for continuity, shorts, opens, and crossover on RJ45 LAN cable, RJ11 telephone cable, and audio video cable TV and all other weather cabling. So I have this, and I've had it for quite some time, but I don't work in that network support or desktop support role. I haven't worked in it for over 10 years. So um, definitely something to have and learn to crimp your own cable. So I'll toss that in there so that you guys can have. CLX asks, how long should you stay in help desk if your goal is to get into a junior sysadmin role? I would argue that help desk is a junior sysadmin role. I mean, there's different environments have a different definition for help desk and desktop support. If you're a junior sysadmin role is basically someone who can do bash and write script in PowerShell. If you can work any one of those, um, you're already in a junior sysadmin role. So I think the term junior sysadmin is not as meaningful as it was maybe 10 years or so ago. 10 years ago, before we had cloud computing, a junior sysadmin made sense. Now that you have cloud computing and you have virtualization, you're either a sysadmin or you're not. There is no junior to this anymore. You're junior if you're desktop support, but you're not junior if you're sysadmin. Sysadmin is a full-blown responsibility now. Hey, what's going on, Christian? That's a pretty interesting link you dropped there, Christian, because that's a pretty expensive. It's pretty expensive unless you're a full-time network person. I probably wouldn't spend that kind of money unless you can get it, on a discount. But the return on investment may not be there unless you're going to be a full network guy. Now, this right here may be different. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, this is what Christian, this is from Home Depot, but Christian posted the other one. But this is only 26 bucks. And it comes with the crimper and the punch down and the various heads needed to create a network cable. So if I work for, let's say, what do you call it? As a contractor for DirecTV or Verizon or Comcast, yeah, I would probably spend the bucks on the big kit that Christian posted. But if I'm just doing this for corporate work, then yeah, I'm just gonna get whatever's sufficient for the job. Not gonna spend a whole lot of money on it. Yep, phones. Yep, you're gonna be working on phones. I talked about that earlier, Christian. Yeah, punch down and crimp is all you really need. Don't make it too complex. You're not gonna get. You're never gonna find yourself in a situation where you have to actually um, go beyond the punch down and the crimper in most corporate environments. Usually, if it gets more advanced than that, they have a dedicated person that's actually working on that type of stuff, or they have a contract with somebody. All right, we'll go another 90 seconds. If I don't see any questions in the chat, then I'm just going to shut it down. I think I've covered most of what needed to be covered based on the questions that were sent to me. Unless you work in a data center, you won't need a big, hefty network cable kit, if that makes any sense to anybody else. All right, going once, going twice. Yeah, Christian, I was just mentioning that if you find yourself in an environment in a third world country or a developing nation or something like that, and all you had was a spool of Cat5 cable and some jacks, it's good to actually know how to put together um, a network 5 cable kit, a network 5 cable for endpoint to LAN, because you may find yourself in a place like Haiti or in a place like Africa where you don't have any stores. There's no Fry's, there's no Micro Center, there's no Best Buy in these places. You may have to build your own on site, and you have to get it right. So in that regard, yeah, the network toolkit that Christian pointed to and the ability to crimp your own cables, very crucial. I didn't go over Server Plus, Christian, because this is more focused on desktop support, not server support. So desktop support, A plus, ITIL, and your CET, certified electronics technician. We went over that. And we've done sysadmin and networking weeks ago. We've gone over that, so people can go back in the archive and check that out. We've done actually 2 or 3 shows on that just this summer alone. But for a lot of people who were trying to get into IT, they didn't understand um, what they needed to have skill set wise and what they needed to go through. A lot of questions were coming in, like, should I get cloud certified? Should I do this? Should I do that? And it's like, wait a second, you haven't really done anything yet. career-wise. So you can't just jump from 0 to 100 and think that's going to work. It usually doesn't work very well. All right. I don't see any other questions in the chat, and I think people are dropping off now. So, all right. Thank you all for joining us, man. Hit the like button if you have not already done so. Share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those on the community page. And make sure that if you have any ambitions of getting into this area, we do offer IT mentorship, including myself and a couple other guys. Gabe, he's a part of that as well. We have a vast amount of experience in information technology in the service sector as well as the corporate sector, and can help you facilitate and navigate your way through the industry. We're in a big transition right now, so a lot of companies are replacing their desktops and laptops for new ones for 2020, and a lot of organizations are moving from legacy stuff, legacy infrastructure to cloud. So there's a lot of transitioning going on right now and a massive hiring. I had 20 jobs submitted to me just this week alone. They're looking for desktop people. They can't find enough of them. Can't find enough desktop people, can't find enough help desk people who can speak English, because they're not allowing a lot of these jobs to go to the Middle East. A lot of stuff is coming back stateside, and these are big opportunities for Black men to be getting themselves into. Need desktop support people, and they need to fill the minority quota. So why not take advantage of these opportunities while they're still here? All right, let me get out of here, man. Oh, Christian's here. All right, before I go, Christian, you have anything you want to add? I didn't know you were in the chat, in the being promoted to the panel. Yeah, CLX says a lot of companies are migrating to Windows 10 from Windows 7. Yeah, it's a big transition. I know companies right now with 100,000 laptops and desktops that they have to transition, and they're not going to do it in 1 year. That's a 3-year project. That means they have to do at least 10 laptops a day, if that. Christian, do you have anything you want to add? Your mic is muted if you're trying to talk.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. The company I'm working for, we got about 6,000 PCs scheduled between here and December to get migrated over to Windows 10.
I don't know what kind of imaging tool you guys are using, what you're pushing, or you're using to push images out, but it can go easy, it can go it can be difficult. I remember going from XP to Windows 7, that transition, what a disaster that was. Oh man, that was awful.
Yep, I remember that one too.
Oh, that thing was awful. All of the users' credentials and not credentials, but all the users' profiles did not transition over to Windows 7. So sometimes you had some visibility gaps in those areas, and they just did not go over well. So you had to kind of copy and paste users' profile up, bring it up to a file, a network share file, and then after the imaging was done, you had to go back up to that temporary space and bring that user's profile down that way and copy it over. It was a huge disaster.
At least they had a migration tool for that. I don't think we got a migration tool for 7 to 10. You can upgrade to it, but not migrating profiles.
Why are they upgrading to it rather than just building new PCs out or buying new PCs?
Yeah. But from like XP to 7, we at least had the migration tool.
Well, see, XP to 7 was a little bit different, right? Because the hardware was fairly compatible. With 7 to 10, that hardware is not compatible,
Yeah.
right? What worked on 7 isn't going to work on 10. It's just one of those things. Or if it does work, it's not going to work fairly.
Not optimized for it. Nah.
Yeah, it's not going to be optimized for it. So I wasn't sure why you would be transitioning from, upgrading your operating system from 7 to 10 on the same machine.
It depends on the client. If they didn't want to buy new hardware, they just go ahead and try to upgrade it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys studied that A+ book. You should come out fairly well. The Pearson books, in my opinion, cover just about any and everything. At the beginning of every chapter, it asks you, "Do I know this?" And then you kind of answer those following questions. And if you can answer those questions, then you pretty much move on to the next chapter. No need to waste time. Yeah, and that's really all I have. Christian, you have anything you want to drop to these guys in terms of what they should know? A+, ITIL, service desk management, service desk support.
A place is a big jump to get in there. Some people don't even have like that much experience or certifications once they start a basic help desk position. So yeah, if you got your A+, that's a huge jump ahead of some of the people that's out there. Mostly it's like, can you think analytically? How's your troubleshooting skills are, and do you know how to talk to people?
Yeah, soft skills are important.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys are introverted and they have difficulty really just dealing with upper class, or not to say upper class, but upper level customers and clients. So you got to be able to articulate yourself in a way that the end user or the customer can understand. In layman's terms, you don't want to over explain yourself on these areas that are going to be critical to them, because they don't care particularly why it's doing the things that it's doing, but they need to have a clear understanding as to
Why?
what the impact is going to be on them, how much downtime is going to be on them on their behalf.
Yeah, we got a couple of project managers that we had to pull in and have a meeting about. They're speaking too technical to some of our customers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, you're going to like bring that back down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Too much technical jargon confuses the person. It's like babble fish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot the word I'm looking for, but I'll use analogies. Like if someone doesn't understand, like, okay, why are we doing this, that, and the other? I would try to like explain it to something else that they would have a better understanding of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you can use analogies real good, that'll help you out a lot.
Yep.
I've actually had a company I'm working for now. We do like consulting work for other companies doing their IT work. I've actually had presidents, board of directors, like, yeah, just send Christian over because he can explain that stuff a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And they would like send me out to various companies, like, we're doing this because of this. Why? Because of this. And I'll use analogy. Oh, dude, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
And once they understand what's going on and why, most people are like willing to go ahead and work with you. If they don't understand what's going on, yeah, they're going to fight you every step of the way.
Yeah, resistance. The resistance is futile. So But yeah, that's all I have, man. If you just now joining us, man, go make sure you listen to the replay. If you have any other further questions, just drop that in the comment section after the video is completed, and then we can get back to you. Make sure that you're following the links as well. The links are in the chat now, but they'll be in the video description after it's been completed. So, all right. That being said, man, we have another hangout possibly in the next half an hour, and we'll be back for that. So, thank you all for joining us, and shalom.
Thank you, everybody.